let us get into our Pythagoras, right? So we're actually gonna ignore this first question to start off with, just because I know we had a bit of a struggle on Monday. So we're gonna start off with this example here that I'm putting just randomly on the side. And we're gonna try this one first before we start stepping it up and sort of doing slightly more complex questions. Alrighty, so guys, remember Pythagoras works in right angle triangles only, so that's really, really important. If you don't have a right angle triangle, you can't use Pythagoras. So the first thing that we always want to make sure of is that we are working with a right angle triangle. And remember, we said on Monday, I can't even remember what day of the week we're on. We said on Monday that we always want to identify for ourselves the hypotenuse. So that's the side opposite the right angle. Right, if I just put some information in here for us, just so that we do have what we need. Okay, before I carry on. Guys, I'm not going back to the home screen right now. I will do it if we take a brain break. You guys need to gain all of that information, introduction information in the 5 minutes that Yolanda does the introduction. So those of you wanting bootcamp stuff, the purple block stuff, I will, if we have a break, I will go back to it. Otherwise, just go and have a look at the recording. If you are struggling with visuals, if you're struggling with a video, you need to log out and log back in again. If that still doesn't work, you need to then unpin and repin my screen. That should hopefully help you. If you are struggling with audio stuff at any point, same thing, log out and log back in. Double check your audio connection. If things are glitching, it could be either one of us. As far as I can see, my internet is pretty stable, but obviously it could be on either side. So again, just keep trying. You might need to log out and log back in. Otherwise, just remember that we do have the recordings. Okay, so just some admin stuff before we do that. I mean, Yolanda, am I glitching for you?
No, you are perfectly fine. That's why I'm saying that it could be network on their side.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay,
because
so
here you are perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so yeah, those are just some solutions to any technical problems that you might have. Otherwise, just pop it on the chat and we'll do our best to help you. Hopefully, those who are having a problem, Yolanda's posted on the chat. I've now said so. Hopefully, we're all good. All right, so guys, here's my right angle triangle. We're going to have a look at this now. Remember, like I said, the first thing that we always want to do is we want to identify our hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is the side directly opposite my 90-degree angle, or my right angle. And so this side here is my hypotenuse. Now remember, Pythagoras says to us that we take our hypotenuse squared, and that is equal to the sum of the square of my two other sides. So my other sides are 8 squared, and then the 15, which we then square. Right, so this is our theorem of Pythagoras. I don't have enough space to put my reason, so I'm just going to put it down here. And whenever we use Pythagoras, we do have to give a reason, which is Pythag, just to tell your teacher that you do know that you are working with Pythagoras. Right, so once we've set up our equation, we can now go and solve for what we need to solve. So we're looking for the hypotenuse squared. I'm just going to use an h. I don't want to write out hypotenuse again, so I'm going to use h squared is equal to the side 8. All right, so here's my side 8. Please remember, we only raise our hands when I ask you to raise your hands. If you have questions, you need to put them in the chat. So here's my side 8 that's been squared. I then also have my side 15, which is going to be squared. That's what Pythagoras says to me. So 8 squared is 64. 15 squared is 225, if I'm not mistaken. But now I'm obviously panicking. Yeah, 225. And so we add those two values together. And remember, this gives us h squared. Now remember, we don't want h squared. We want h. So we'll chat about how we deal with that in a second. If I add those two values together, we get 289. And again, we do not want h squared, we want h. So we need to square root both sides in order to get rid of my square. Okay, when I square root both of my sides, I end up with h equaling 17 millimeters. And so I've worked out the value of my hypotenuse length. And that's all that Pythagoras is, grade 8. So we're working out a side length in my right angle triangle using this rule that deals with the sum of squares. Alrighty, so I'm going to leave that on, but I'm going to give you another one that I want you to try by yourselves. Oh, close, but that doesn't matter, we'll make it work. Okay, so you are trying this one by yourselves that I'm writing down now. I just want to get some nice numbers going here. Right, so I want you guys to find in the second example the star. Okay, so I want to know what x is equal to. There was a question of, is h the hypotenuse? Yes, it is the hypotenuse. I just didn't want to write the whole thing out again. Yes, h is the hypotenuse. Right, so while you're giving this a try, if anyone has any questions that they need to ask before attempting this, you may raise your hand now. Otherwise, you are trying the second example here, and we're working out what x is. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand, but otherwise you're trying the second example. Witness? There should be a pop-up to unmute yourself. Okay, witness, you need to unmute yourself, otherwise, unfortunately, I can't hear you. A pop-up should come up on your screen. No. Still no pop-up? Okay, witness, you're going to need to put your question in the chat. You're not unmuting for some reason. Yolanda, I don't know. I don't think there's anything we can do.
Yes, witness, because you should see a pop-up on your screen. Then you must click on it so that you can talk to us, okay? But for now, because it's not working, we're not sure what it is. You can keep on trying. I can keep on unmuting you if you want. But the best thing is to put your questions on the chat, okay? So we can see it. We'll be able to help you there.
Okay, so witness, you're going to have to put it on the chat. We can't hear you, unfortunately. You aren't unmuting. I keep pushing unmute. You need to like click the pop-up, but there we go. Finally.
Can you start afresh because I didn't understand the first one?
Are you new?
Yes, I'm new.
Okay, so witness, what you need to do is we've already done this. So you need to go and have a look at the video from Monday in order to go and have a look and see what was happening here. We are carrying on with Pythagoras today, so hopefully it'll make sense as we go along, but the video is up, okay?
Okay.
All right. I'm seeing lots of wonderful answers in the chat. Let's go through and witness. I would listen again now because we're basically going to do exactly the same thing, just with different numbers. And that's what Pythagoras is. All right, guys. So first things first, identify our hypotenuse. We can see it is the side x because that's opposite to my right angle. So we've got x squared is equal to the two other sides squared and added together. So the 6 squared plus the 8 squared. And remember, this is all because of Pythagoras, and I do have to give the reason Pythag because it is technically a geometric reason. Ooh. Okay, so 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64, and so adding those two together, I end up with 100. Now remember, this is still x squared equals 100. We want x. So we need to square root both sides in order to get the x alone. And so we end up with x is equal to 10 centimeters. Now, guys, what's really important, and I'm going to say it again for I don't know which how many times, we don't stop at x squared. Okay, we want x, not x squared. So you have no choice in the matter. You have to square root your value. So when you end up with x squared equals, you have to square root before you can get your final answer. If you aren't doing that, you aren't actually completing the sum. Right, so we want x, not x squared. We have to square root. And this is our application of Pythagoras. All right, so if you need to screenshot those two, I'm going to leave them up for 30 seconds, and then we're going to have a look at some more examples involving Pythagoras. Remember, any questions that you have, go on the chat. And guys, we have done a lesson on this, so you need to go and watch videos. I am carrying on with Pythagoras examples, but if you need to go back to the start, you need to go and watch the video that's online. Alrighty, so guys, if we have a look at sort of our first example of today's lesson, we have been asked to determine the unknown lengths, and in this case, the unknown length that I'm asked for is x, y. Right, so if in the question it tells me a specific length that I'm looking for, what I do is I go to my diagram and I find where that length is. So I can see that xy is this length down the left-hand side. I can't highlight to save my life there. Okay. So it's this length down the left, and that is the side length we're looking for. Now, nothing changes about what we're doing here. Okay, this is still Pythagoras. It's a right angle triangle. We're looking for a length. Our first step is always identify the hypotenuse. Okay, so I'm going to write this down. Identify. Let's try that again. Hypotenuse. And we said that the hypotenuse has two important characteristics. It's always opposite our 90-degree angle, and it will always be our longest side in the triangle, always. Okay, so in any right angle triangle, your hypotenuse is always the longest side. So I go to my right angle, here I am, I go directly across and I identify my hypotenuse. What I see here though, is that I have been given the hypotenuse. So my hypotenuse for this triangle is equal to 30 centimeters. Now, once again, this doesn't change anything that we're doing. We're going to do exactly the same thing as what we've been doing. Once I know where my hypotenuse is, my second step is to sub my values into the Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to say Pythag equation. That probably makes a bit more sense. Right, so my Pythagorean equation is the hypotenuse squared. Let's actually do this. Hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of my two other sides squared. So my two other sides are xy squared plus yz squared. So if I look in my triangle, those are the two other sides I have in the triangle that I'm working with. So I sub in what I know. My hypotenuse, Lomso, I don't know where you're getting 18 from, so let's just hang on and let's just see what's happening here slowly together. So guys, I know what my hypotenuse is. We've just identified that my hypotenuse is 30. So I go 30 squared is equal to, now remember xy is the side I'm wanting to find. That's what I was told to find, xy. So I don't know what xy is, so I'm just going to leave it as xy squared. And I do know the length of yz because that was given to me. So if we have a look here, YZ was my other side. That's 24 centimeters. So I know what YZ is. I can substitute in that value 24 squared. All right, so guys, this looks a little bit different to what we were doing earlier because now we have the hypotenuse. But again, it's not changing what we're doing. So if we take 30 squared, we end up with 900. We still don't know what xy is, so we just leave it as xy squared. And then we've got 24 squared. 24 squared is 576. So once we've subbed in our values, now what we need to remember to do is essentially solve our equation using inverse operations. So our goal when we're solving the equation is to solve for the side I don't know, which remember is this xy. So I'm trying to get xy alone. And so I now start to solve my equation. So guys, inverse operations, the first thing I want to get rid of is my plus 576. So I'm going to subtract 576 on both sides. And that will leave me with just xy squared on the right-hand side. So 900 minus 576 gives me 324 is equal to xy squared. Again, we don't want xy squared, we want xy. And like I said earlier, we always have to square root. So whenever you do Pythagoras, at some point you're going to have to square root. So we square root both sides so that we can get rid of the squared, leaving us with just xy. And the square root of that fun number is, get a proper scientific calculator going here, is 18. Okay, so we get 18 centimeters is equal to xy. Now, guys, you can double check yourself because what I said to you earlier was that your hypotenuse, is always your longest side. So if we've now determined that xy is 18, we double check that 30 is still the longest side. It definitely is 30, 24, 18. My hypotenuse is still my longest side. And so I've done everything correctly here. Okay, so when you're given the hypotenuse, nothing changes in our method of working out. We do exactly the same things. We identify our hypotenuse, we substitute in our values, and we solve for whatever it is that we're looking for. Right, the only thing that's different is that I do actually know my hypotenuse now, and we have to remember that when we substitute in. Alrighty. I haven't asked for hands, grade 8s. We need to use our ears, please. Okay, Zikatelo, I don't understand what how means. You need to ask me something specific. So how, what, or where are you struggling? Unfortunately, I can't do much with that. Bokang, this type of question, how many marks would it be out of? So again, Pythag type questions in grade 8 are generally between 3 to 4, 5 marks. So you would get a mark for substituting in. I don't know if anyone realized, but I forgot my reason. Remember, we always have to put Pythag. So you'll get a mark for your substitution. You'll get a mark for the subtraction in this case. And then depending how generous we are with our marks, we might give you a mark for square rooting, but then you'll definitely get a mark for your answer. So like I say, Pythagoras questions are generally between 3 and 5 marks. Okay. Right, so whilst you are screenshotting this question, if anyone needs to raise their hand to ask a question, you may now raise your hand to do so. whilst you're deciding if you need to raise your hand. And grade 8s, please remember that I'm not answering 1,000,001 questions. You need to listen to each other, and you need to make sure that if your question has been answered, you lower your hand. Right. There's a question of why are we subtracting, because in the previous sum we were adding. I've already said this. We are subtracting because this time we have the hypotenuse. In all of our other examples, we were looking for the hypotenuse. Because I now have the hypotenuse, my working out looks a little bit different. Tatenda, I don't know how you could have gotten it unless you set up your equation differently. You'd have to explain it, but yeah, the only way I could see you getting that is if you immediately said the 30 squared minus the 24 squared equals xy squared. Otherwise, I don't know how you got that. Okay, Melanie, I've just answered that question, so hopefully you heard my answer there. Sabiso?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, I was wondering if my answers can be like digits. Like maybe my answer will be 18,5 or something like that.
Yeah, so we can end up with decimals. Some examples are going to be decimals. That's absolutely fine.
Oh, okay, thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Butle?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and how are you?
I'm okay, thanks. Oh, English?
Ma'am, may I please ask, can you please repeat it again, because I did not understand?
I'm not repeating the whole thing, so where did you not understand from?
Where we have to use xy over 2.
Okay, I don't have any xy's over 2. Nothing is being divided here.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Butle, we're going to do more examples. So just listen to the examples as we go along. Hopefully it'll make a bit more
Yes, ma'am.
sense. Otherwise, just ask again, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Lindo?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I wanted to ask our teacher when she was teaching us on how to solve the z and y or x and z, I mean z and x, whatever. For us, it was w and v. So he said wv squared equals uv squared plus uw squared. And then WV presented 13 squared, and then UV presented 5 squared plus YW squared, and then he came up with the answers. I wanted to know, ma'am, can ask for us. He for the way you wrote 900 equals to x y squared squared plus 576. Why didn't we say xy squared equals to 900 plus 576?
Because, okay, grade 8, I want you all to listen to this because I'm not going to say it again, all right? So Lindo, the reason I'm not saying 900 plus is because 900 is the hypotenuse. Here we know what the hypotenuse is, all right? So in my equation, I know the hypotenuse and I know yz. Because of inverse operations, if I want to get this xy squared alone, I have to bring the yz over the equal sign. And so that's why it becomes minus. It is not plus. It is only plus if we are trying to find the hypotenuse. But in this case, I had given you the hypotenuse. You already had that information. So you only add if you are looking for the hypotenuse.
Also, we do have it. We're just going to say minus.
Yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
good. Okay, last question, witness.
Miss,
Yes.
are we allowed to use the calculator, because our math teacher said that you must not use the calculator?
Okay, so I mean, it depends on the teacher. If your teacher has said you can't, then they have to give you numbers that are easy to work with, especially because you're squaring and square rooting.
Okay.
I mean, I let my kids use a calculator, but it depends on the teacher.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Grade 8, we are not listening to each other, which is quite frustrating because I can see that there are questions coming up on the chat that I have quite literally answered 30 seconds ago. So if you aren't going to listen, this is not a productive use of your time. All right. So I am not re-answering questions because, as I said at the beginning, as I said now, we need to listen to each other. There are 141 of you in this class. I can't answer 141 questions. We are already more than halfway through this lesson, and we have done essentially one question on what this lesson is supposed to be on. So if we can't listen to each other, then unfortunately you're not going to get much out of this lesson, which really sucks for you because the whole point is that you do get something out. So those of you who feel you haven't gotten a response on the chat, it's because I have actually answered your question, and you need to go and have a look at the recording. Right, so if you're still not really feeling super comfortable, I'm moving on to the second question, and hopefully as we do this one again, or as we do this one together rather, it will make a little bit more sense of why we are subtracting, of what Pythagoras is and how we use it. Okay, so as we've always done, we're going to first identify our hypotenuse. So we go to our right angle. Here's our right angle. Whoops. Our right angle is down bottom right, and we go to the side directly opposite, and that's our hypotenuse. So really importantly here, guys, I am giving you the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is 21 units. So really important, if I give you the hypotenuse, we subtract. I'm actually going to write this down so no one can argue. If you get given Okay, so again, if you get given the length of the hypotenuse, you will have to subtract when working out the unknown side length. Okay, if you are looking for the hypotenuse, that is when you add, and that's what we did in Monday's lesson. Okay, so we know where our hypotenuse is. We are now going to use Pythagoras. So Pythagoras says, remember, hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the two other sides squared. So let's just call, okay, no, let's not do anything. X squared plus 8 squared. And this is all because of Pythag. Now, importantly, we know the hypotenuse, so we can actually substitute in for h. The hypotenuse was 21. So we have 21 squared is equal to x squared plus 8 squared. Right, 21 squared is 441 is equal to x squared plus 64. So this is now where the subtraction comes in. I just want to move the stuff down, otherwise I'm not going to have space. This is now where the subtraction comes in, because what we want to do is we want to take that 64 and we need it to move over the equal sign. So remember, it needs to join the 441, And so using my inverse operations, I'm going to subtract 64 on both sides. And this is where the subtraction comes in because I'm solving for x squared. Right, so 441 minus 64 gives me 377 is equal to x squared. And because again, guys, we are not looking for x squared, we are looking for x. We need to square root in order to get rid of the squared. And the square root of, oopsie daisies, 377 is equal to, and this is again in answer to the questions of can we ever get a decimal? Yes, because x is now equal to 19,42 units. So guys, it's perfectly fine to get decimal answers. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, like it happens in Pythagoras. Again, so I really need everyone to open their ears and listen here. If you are given, if you are given the hypotenuse, you will have to subtract to work out your unknown side length. If you're looking for the hypotenuse, then we just add. Okay, so just checking the chat going on here. Zoe, yeah, I hope that covers it. Thank you for answering, Tal. 64 comes from the 8 squared, absolutely fine. Butle, you need to remember you're rounding off. So Butle is saying their calculator says 19,41. So your calculator gives you 19,416487, and there's a whole bunch of decimals. If we are rounding off to 2 decimal places, we want our answer to stop 2 numbers after the comma. Okay, so this 6 rounds my 1 up to 2. That's where I get 19,42 units from. Okay, it's rounding. Okay, you're all saying it on the chat. That's great, but I've just explained why it's 19,42. So I hope we all listen. Okay, good. Okay, it's just because of the rounding off, and we just need to be mindful of that. Right, guys, take your screenshots. If anyone has any questions, we can raise our hand. Hopefully it's starting to make a bit more sense as we go along. So 2 decimal places is just the standard rounding. You need to read the instructions on your exam or on your test. Usually, like on that front page where it's all the instructions, it usually tells you how many decimal places to round off to there. Or the specific question might tell you. But the like standard rounding off is always 2 decimal places. So if you're not sure what to round off to, rather just round off to 2 decimal places. Okay, cool. So guys, I want you to try C by yourselves. So let's just give it a try. Okay, we will do the first bit together, identify the hypotenuse. So here's my right angle, directly opposite is my hypotenuse. So 10 centimeters is the hypotenuse. So it's basically exactly the same thing as what we've been doing, just new numbers. So what I'll even do is I will leave question B up there for you. Let's give question C a try. Okay, I don't want you to look at question D yet. Let's just try question C. Zai, would the answer be wrong if we don't round it off? I mean, at some point you have to round it off. So if you're going to write the whole decimal that your calculator gives you down, no, we won't mark it wrong. Sometimes we do take a mark off if your rounding is incorrect, especially if we've told you what to round off to in the question. So you might lose a mark if you were given an instruction and didn't do it. Like I know I'm strict with rounding off, but in general, it's not a huge train smash. Try your best, but it's not hugely wrong. So if you'd said 19,41 here, your teacher will probably give it to you. Christian, it would change if it was cubed, because then we would be cube rooting, not square rooting. But Pythagoras only works with squares. Okay, I like what I'm seeing so far. Guys, just remember, it's in centimeters. So your answer must have whatever centimeters in it. Nice, guys, keep those answers coming. Doing really nicely. And like I say, guys, as you start to do this more, it does become a little easier. We just have to practice it. Honestly, if you just go onto Google and Google Pythag practice, you will get so many examples. But you guys also all have textbooks that you can practice from, and obviously a quiz later, and you can also go back and watch these videos and try things by yourself. You just pause the video and try it before you see the answer. So there's many, many ways that you can practice this. Nice. Okay, let's have a look at this. So we know where our hypotenuse is. We identified that together for ourselves. So we have 10 squared, hypotenuse squared, is equal to the two other sides squared and added together. So x squared plus 8 squared. Remember your reason, Pythag? So 10 squared is 100, x squared is what we're looking for, and 8 squared, as we discussed earlier, is 64. So what we now need to do is our inverse operations. We need to get that 64 to join 100. So we need to use inverse operations. And so we have 100 minus 64 is equal to x squared. Okay, so again, because we are given the hypotenuse, we have to subtract. So 100 minus 64 is 36, is equal to x squared. Now remember, I don't want x squared, I want x. So I have to square root both sides so that I can get rid of that x squared. And we know that the square root of 36 is 6. And so therefore x equals 6 centimeters. Now, guys, if you had written your answer x equals 6 centimeters rather than 6 centimeters equals x, it means exactly the same thing. It really doesn't matter. All right, but I saw lots of 6 centimeters and 6s on the chat. So really nicely done, guys. Well done. Right. So if you haven't taken a screenshot of B and C, let's do that now. Once you have your screenshots, I want you to try D that I've just put back up onto the screen here. So let's give D a try. When you are done, let's see what we end up with for X. So remember, first step, identify which side is your hypotenuse, and then you sub in according to the information you have. No, it's Abiso, no brain break today. As I said on Monday, we can't unfortunately get through 3 questions in an hour. So we have to make sure that we're understanding stuff. If you need to take a little break, that's fine. Have a stretch, have a 2-minute break, but then we're going to carry on. Witness, I'm so glad it's all starting to make a bit more sense. That is wonderful. Siamtanda, no, the question would say solve for x, so you would have to say x equals. Again, like your teacher might be a bit more lenient. I mean, to be fair, I'd probably give the mark, but just try and do what you're asked to do. So because it says solve for x, you should have then x equals and then an answer. Guys, let's just double check our calculations as we go on. Yes, witness, I'd like you to try question D for me. So grade 8, you should be doing exactly what we've been doing for the last 4 questions. So here's your hypotenuse. So the 7 millimeters is our hypotenuse, and you sub in accordingly. I wonder, okay, I can put it a bit lower. Hopefully that's a bit better for you. Okay, so I wonder, Zoe, hopefully you can see question D now. If you can't remember,
You can see it. I think it's visible enough.
otherwise we have given you options of how to sort out your screen viewing. Remember, there are units, it's in millimeters, so your answer should be something millimeters. Liam, are we okay there? I can just see you sneezing and needing to blow your nose and everyone's getting sick right before exams. Early nights, let your body rest.
That's the medicine. Yeah.
Okay, I'm liking some of the answers that I'm seeing a bit more now. Okay, I'm going to give everyone another minute and then we're going to have a look. Guys, don't forget to square root. Okay, let's have a C. So I'm just going to make this bigger so that we can all see what's going on. Right, we've identified the hypotenuse. So remember, hypotenuse squared, so 7 squared is equal to the sum of my 2 other sides squared. So x squared plus 1 squared. And this is all because of Pythagoras. Right, now guys, 7 squared is 49. X squared is what we're going to solve for, and we know that 1 squared is just 1. So now when we do our inverse operations, the 1 needs to join the 49, and so we're going to subtract 1 on both sides. So 49 minus 1 equals x squared. So that means we've got 48 equals x squared. So those of you that put 48 on the chat, you are nearly there. What you need to remember is to square root, because I don't want x squared. I want x. So we have to square root both sides in order to get rid of the x squared. And when you square root 48, you get 6,928,203, and there's a whole long decimal. Okay. Now I'm putting this there just to remind you that if you are asked to round off to 2 decimal places, you want your answer to stop 2 numbers after the comma. So this 8 rounds the 2 up to a 3, And so this is x is equal to 6,93 millimeters. Okay, so please just remember your rounding. Please just remember your square root as well. I care more about the square root than the rounding because the square root has to be there. So just remember your square root. Right. Zoe, with the third answer, I'm not too sure what you mean the third answer. I'm assuming you mean a side that isn't the hypotenuse. If that is what you mean, yes. So that's what I was saying earlier over here. Guys, I'll come back to question D now. So that's what I was saying over here. If you are not looking for the hypotenuse, you will subtract. If you are looking for the hypotenuse, you will add. And what I'll actually do is I'll write exactly that here. Oh, golly. At question D, just so that we have a little reminder for ourselves. Okay, so guys, if we, yeah, let's try again. If we are looking for the hypotenuse, we add. If we have the hypotenuse, we then subtract. Okay, so this is a little reminder for you of when we add and when we subtract. Okay, witness, quick question before we end off. In the meantime, guys, you can see the quiz link in the chat. Please make sure you grab it. Witness, again, you need to unmute yourself. There we go.
Ma'am, can you explain again? Because I got 48 millimeter.
Okay, so I've just explained it. So you got to this point here, right? You need to remember to square root. So you just need to go that one step further and make sure you square root, and then you get the answer. You've done everything else perfectly. You need to square root. Okay.